Night on the shore of Troy in the 10th year of the war. In a tent in the Greek camp, the most dangerous man alive looks up from his seat and goes still. An old man has come through the enemy lines unseen. He is Priam, king of Troy. And before anyone can move, he kneels, reaches out, and does what no mortal on earth has ever done. He takes the hands of the man who slaughtered his sons, and he kisses them. This is the encounter the entire Iliad has been moving toward. The poem has spent its whole length circling one hard truth, that human beings must accept the death even of those they love most, and that Achilles alone cannot. In these final books it brings him back. Only when Achilles sees his own grief mirrored in his enemy, the father who kisses the hands that killed his sons, can he accept the death of those he loves, rejoin the human world, and so become mortal enough to die. This is where the poem's meditation on mortality comes to rest. The opposition between Hector and Achilles, the man and the force, is resolved only by the killing of Hector. It is by destroying his opposite that Achilles will find his way back into full humanity. But that return does not come at once because the killing itself resolves nothing. Hector lies dead in the dust, and Achilles still cannot reconcile himself to the death of Patroclus. What follows the killing is a meeting between Achilles and Priam, an encounter that illuminates the nature of mortality, the underlying theme of the entire poem. Since Book 18, a single burning desire has driven him to slaughter Hector and avenge his companion. Now Hector is slaughtered, and the desire is not slaked. The grief is not eased by one measure. The deeper problem is terrible in its simplicity. Achilles does not truly want Hector destroyed. What he wants is Patroclus back, and no killing can touch that longing. So he shifts his hunger for vengeance from killing Hector to defiling him, lashing the corpse behind his chariot and dragging it through the dust. This too brings him no ease of mind or spirit. Book 23. Achilles is still grieving. He still refuses to eat. He still refuses to bathe. He goes on dragging Hector's corpse behind his chariot. Then, in the night, a visitor. The ghost of Patroclus rises before him and begs for burial, so that his shade may come to rest and pass over into Hades. Achilles complies, on a colossal scale. The funeral he stages fills most of Book 23. Magnificent games in the dead man's honor, chariot racing, foot racing, contests of every kind of military prowess. And as he had promised over the dead body, he slaughters 12 Trojan youths on the funeral pyre. And even this changes nothing. The elaborate funeral does not ease his grief. It does not move him one step toward accepting that Patroclus is gone. Afterward, Achilles still fasts, still will not bathe, still drags Hector's body behind his chariot. Only one detail is different. He now drags it around the tomb of Patroclus rather than around the walls of Troy. The refusal to eat is more than mourning. It has put Achilles into a condition so strange that the gods themselves must sustain him. He has taken no food since Patroclus died, and Athena has kept him alive, instilling nectar and ambrosia directly into his chest so that hunger will not come upon him. The parallel is exact, and it is chilling. The gods have been preserving the bodies of Patroclus and Hector from corruption by anointing them with ambrosia. Athena preserves the living Achilles from death and corruption in the very same way. Achilles is receiving the treatment the gods reserve for corpses. He is already being handled as though he were dead. Achilles cannot move himself out of this deadlock, so the gods resolve to move him, to force him to return Hector's body to his parents. Near the beginning of Book 24, Apollo stands up among the gods and tells them they must act. Hector, he reminds them, was a pious and reverent man who offered the gods proper sacrifices. The gods owe him recompense. They must see that his body is buried. Of Achilles, Apollo says something devastating. He has destroyed pity. There is no shame left in him, and the shame both harms and profits men. A man may lose someone even closer than a companion, a brother from the same womb, or a son. Yet he weeps for him, he sorrows, and then it is over. For the destinies have set in mortal man a heart of endurance. But Achilles, having torn the heart of life from great Hector, ties him to his horses and drags him around his companion's tomb, and gains nothing by it, neither good nor honor. Let him take care, Apollo warns, not to make the gods angry. For in his fury he does dishonor to the dumb earth. That speech lays out the whole moral standard against which Achilles is being measured. It is the clearest statement in the poem of the normal human approach to grief. A man loses someone dear. He sorrows, he grieves, and then it is over. Humans are made this way with a heart of endurance that lets them absorb the loss of even the dearest and go on living. Achilles alone cannot. It matters too which god says this. Apollo has stood with the Trojans all through the poem, ever since Agamemnon refused to return Chryseis to her father. But there is a deeper reason he is the right voice here. Apollo is the god of medicine and healing, and he is also the god of plague. Two sides of the same coin, for in Greek theology the same god often controls opposites. And one of the main reasons every human culture has developed rituals for disposing of its dead is brutally practical. Unburied bodies left lying in a city breed plague. People in the ancient world did not understand what caused plague, but they observed that unburied corpses in a city produced sickness, and they read that sickness as the displeasure of the god who controlled it. As god of plague and the god of medicine, Apollo is the god most concerned with the proper disposal of the dead. Hector's body is not decaying because the gods have seen to that, but the refusal to bury him is an affront to Apollo in his double role, all the same. When Apollo declares that Achilles is acting beyond all measure, the complaint comes from exactly the right god, and his last image, the dumb earth, carries its own weight. In Greek, the earth is female, the giver and the bearer of life. When the poet describes Helen's brothers, he says the life-bearing earth already covers them back home in Sparta. A dead body is meant to be given back to her, laid under the ground. By dragging a corpse across her surface, Achilles outrages and insults the earth herself. Zeus agrees with Apollo, and the plan unfolds on two tracks at once. He sends Thetis down to her son to tell him that he must give Hector back, and he sends Iris, the messenger, into Troy to urge Priam to go to Achilles and ransom his son's body. Thetis delivers the command and a warning. Zeus will be angry if the body is not returned. Achilles' answer is near complete indifference. So be it, he says. Let Priam bring the ransom and carry the body away, since the Olympian himself so urgently commanded. Listen to the flatness in that. Achilles has recognized that mistreating the corpse is doing nothing for him. It has not assuaged his grief, it has not delivered the vengeance he hoped for. But this is not acceptance, it is exhaustion. And exhaustion is very far from the acceptance that must be reached before the poem can close. In Troy, meanwhile, Iris comes to Priam. Go to Achilles' tent, she tells him, and ransom your son. Hecabe is horrified. She is afraid of losing her husband as well as her son, and her reasoning is hard to answer. A man capable of treating Hector's body as Achilles has done will feel no mercy for an old man's age, but Priam resolves to go. At Hecabe's urging, the old king prays to Zeus for protection and a safe return, and Zeus answers with a favorable omen. An eagle, his own sacred bird, sweeping past on the right, the good-omened side in Greek augury. Then Zeus does more than send a sign. He dispatches Hermes, the guide and the messenger god, to bring the old man through the enemy lines. Priam drives out onto the dark plain toward the Greek camp, a mule-drawn wagon behind him to carry his son home. A young man approaches through the darkness, Hermes in disguise, as gods so often appear to humans in this poem, and leads him safely into the camp. At the tent, the god reveals his true identity and leaves Priam with one piece of counsel. Go in, approach Achilles, and beseech him in the name of his own father, Peleus. Ask him in a father's name to have mercy and give up the body. Priam enters and kneels before Achilles. In the name of Peleus, he begs him to take pity and give back the body of his son. His speech is extraordinarily moving, and it builds to some of the most memorable lines in the poem. He was a fortunate man once, he says, before the Greeks came to Troy. 50 sons, 19 of them born of Hector, the rest of other mothers, and Achilles has killed most of them. One son remained, Hector, the one main hope left to Priam and Hecate. Paris goes entirely unmentioned, apparently negligible now, and Achilles has killed Hector too. Honor the gods, Priam pleads. Remember your own father, and take pity on me. Then come the lines the whole poem has been waiting for. I am more pitiful still, Priam says. I have done what no other mortal on earth has done. I have put my lips to the hands of the man who killed my children. The gesture is unprecedented, and it is unbearable, and it breaks something open in Achilles. He reacts with wonder, with compassion, and with grief. Gently, he sits the old man down beside him, and then the two enemies weep together. The poet is precise about the tears. Priam weeps for Hector. Achilles weeps now for his own father Peleus, whom he knows he will never see again, and now for Patroclus. Two enemies side by side, one sound of grief filling the tent. When they have wept for a while, Achilles speaks. He marvels first that Priam dared to come alone into the enemy camp. Then he says there is no advantage in excessive lamentation, and that they should cease their weeping. And he offers the old king a brief parable of human life, one of the most famous passages in the poem. Such is the way the gods have spun life for unfortunate mortals, he says, that we live in unhappiness, while the gods themselves have no sorrows. Two urns stand on the doorsill of Zeus, one filled with evils, one with blessings, unlike in the gifts they bestow. If Zeus mingles the two and gives them to a man, that man shifts between evil fortune and good. But if Zeus pours only from the urn of sorrows, he makes a wretched failure of the man, and evil hunger drives him across the earth. Priam was fortunate once before the Greeks came. So was Achilles' own father Peleus as a young man, though hard old age is upon him now. The parable is not despair. It is a hard-won clarity. Human beings have exactly two possibilities, a life that is wholly evil, or a life that mixes good and evil. Only the gods enjoy the third, a life of nothing but good. That simply does not happen for mortals. And this is not pessimism, it is realism. The best a human being can hope for is the mixture. Unmixed good does not occur in human life. And it is Achilles saying it. Through the image of the two urns, Achilles tells Priam that he too must bear adversity, precisely what gods and friends have been telling Achilles for several books, while he was unable to hear it. On anyone else's lips, in any other context, this might sound like a truism. Spoken by Achilles to Priam, it becomes profoundly moving. But this is not peace. For all the compassion passing between them, the two men are still enemies. When Priam presses again for the body, Achilles' voice hardens. He has already agreed, at Zeus's command, to give Hector back. Do not push me, he warns the old man. Do not make me angry. The killing rage lies just beneath the surface, and Achilles knows it could break loose at any moment. That barely governed rage shapes even his mercy. Achilles orders the slave women to wash Hector's body before it is returned. The gods have kept the corpse from decay, but it is still covered with blood, gore, and dirt, and Achilles fears the sight of it. If Priam sees his son in that state, the old man's grief will flare into anger. Priam's anger will ignite his own, and Achilles will kill him. Two killing rages in one small tent, held in check only by deliberate restraint. Once the body is washed and cared for, Achilles himself lifts Hector in his arms and lays him on the wagon. Then he comes back into the tent and says the thing that no one, not his friends, not his own mother, has been able to make him say. It is time to eat. The man who has fasted for days, kept alive on the food of the gods, now insists that he and his guests must share a meal. In Book 9, Phoenix told Achilles the story of Meleagros, an unsuccessful attempt to persuade him to set aside his anger. Now Achilles reaches for an example from antiquity himself, a paradigm of how human beings can bear up under the worst grief. He chooses Niobe. Niobe had boasted that she deserved more worship than the goddess Leto, because she had 12 children and Leto only 2. But Leto's 2 were Apollo and Artemis, and for her presumption, a mortal measuring herself against a goddess, they killed all 12 of Niobe's children on a single day. Yet even Niobe ate. Even the mother, who lost 12 children in one day, took food and continued her life. And so Achilles says, Priam too must eat. He sits the old king down. He kills a sheep with his own hands, roasts it, and serves his enemy a meal. The reversal is complete. Achilles is now saying to Priam exactly what was said in vain to him, that he must eat, that others have borne the loss of even dear people and endured even more. Thetis told him this, his friends told him this, he could not accept it, and the poem understands why. Until this point, Achilles has been like anyone facing overwhelming grief, who at first can only insist that this particular person cannot really be dead. To someone in that state, the common comfort, that this happens to everyone, that one must endure because everyone endures, can feel worse than no comfort at all. Even insulting, that loss is common to all, does not make your own loss less bitter. If anything, its very commonness deepens the sorrow. This is why Achilles could not hear the very words Apollo spoke among the gods, that a man loses someone even dearer, grieves, and then it is over. What the words of friends and the gods could not accomplish, the sight of an enemy's sorrow does. Watching Priam grieve, Achilles accepts what it means to be human. Not the acceptance of his own death, which the poem suggests is the comparatively easy part. The acceptance of the death of those we love. And a part of the poem's genius is that it does not labor to explain how this happens. It offers no mechanism. It simply shows us that it happens, a man brought to acceptance, resolution, and recognition by watching an enemy rather than a friend pass through the same grief as his own. Having accepted his humanity, Achilles acts it out in the simplest human ways. After the meal, he promises a truce of 11 days so that the Trojans can give Hector a proper funeral. He has a bed prepared for his guest, and then he retires and sleeps beside Briseis. It is the last time we see Achilles in the poem, and the circle is complete. He is back with Briseis, eating, sleeping, loving, washing, doing all the things humans ought to do, fully reintegrated into the human condition. And here is the paradox. Now he can die. Having become fully alive again, he can now be killed. The audience knows that Achilles is the next great figure to fall after Hector. In the dark of that night, Hermes comes to Priam once more. Do not sleep in the Greek camp, he warns. The enmity is still just beneath the surface. Better to take the body Achilles has placed in the wagon, and go now. And so, though a bed stands prepared for him, Priam obeys. He drives his son home through the darkness, straight back to Troy. And the poem ends with Hector's funeral. Over his body, 3 women lament in turn. Andromache, his wife, Hecabe, his mother, and the last of all, Helen, the woman whose going with Paris began the whole war. He was always kind to me, she says, of all the brothers of Paris, the kindest. The woman whose coming was the beginning of the war speaks the last words spoken over Hector. Then the Iliad simply stops. The final line, so they buried Hector, breaker of horses. The poem ends in the middle of things, exactly as it began in the middle of things. Another bard on another night could have carried the song on. Achilles strolls out of his tent and returned to the battle. The story could go on. The poem is complete. We have watched Achilles withdraw from the human world, rage beyond its limits, and now return to it, only to meet his own death soon after. The Iliad closes not with a victory, not with the fall of a city, but with two enemies weeping together, and a father carrying his son home. Achilles, who could not accept the death of the one he loved, is taught at last by the grief of the man he had every reason to kill. In accepting the loss of others, he accepts that he too must die. The poem leaves him fully human again, and therefore at last mortal, and it ends exactly where a meditation on mortality should end, at the burial of Hector, the most human of all its heroes.